budget. The packet materials are posted online. We have also put the materials in the budget area of our website, and then printed copies were provided to the committee this evening for your budget books. I was not going to present, so to speak, because many of the slides are redundant or exactly the same as they had been before. There is an accompanying memo in the packet related to what is coming before you tonight for an FY23 budget. A couple of weeks ago, the budget subcommittee met with me and Miriam, and following the discussion at the budget hearing and the question in particular about whether or not we have enough and the right staff members at Keller Elementary School, Miriam and I had a conversation that we then presented to the budget subcommittee, which was that based on some adjustments that we felt that could be made in a particular line item, that we could reallocate some funds to support an additional staff member at Keller. On the slides, we have added in the new kind of initiative area or strategic investments, an assistant principal. Not necessarily, this proposal does not have a full year. It would be a partial year assistant principal who works some additional days in the summer, but not the entire summer, estimated at about $100,000 to support Keller Elementary School. This is something that kind of augments some additional teaching staff that have been introduced to the building this year. We have an additional class section for grade 3 next year planned. We have an additional special educator that we have at the building this year based on student needs. As you know, this proposal of the FY23 budget includes the additional literacy specialist and an additional English language educator. And we've added some paraprofessionals. One of our challenges, the numbers on paper don't portray exactly what the reality is in our schools right now. We have vacancies, particularly for paraprofessionals across all of our buildings. And so I shared with you some background information related to this ad. It does not change the bottom line of the FY23 budget. It is the FY23 budget at this point comes to you as a revised superintendent's recommended budget of $70,216,996. That bottom line number remains the same, a 3.53% increase over FY22. And I would suggest approving the budget. Ultimately, the budget vote is you're voting on a bottom line. Budget transfers sometimes and do happen that you've seen over the course of a year. I'm advocating for an assistant principal as I feel like if one position could have an immediate effect, it would be this, because this position would be far reaching in terms of every single staff member, every single student in the building, providing support for evaluation, attention to student behaviors, parent and guardian communication, and day-to-day operational support. In order to support this, the funds have been reallocated from the healthcare line. We had some favorable news, and Miriam may jump in to talk a little bit about that, but we had some favorable news in terms of health insurance rates.
Yeah, so our Insurance Advisory Council has been looking at different rates and shifting the plan to a strategic group, and they're going to meet on Thursday to discuss this further. But we think at this point in time that the rate structure would be more favorable for us to about a 5% increase versus the 8% that we had budgeted. So that's where we were able to reduce the budget to account for the additional position for the assistant principal.
Okay. Are there any questions about that? Yeah, Dave?
Not about the health insurance, transportation. I know at one point that was kind of like a questionable. Has that started to narrow down at all, where we have a better idea about what those costs will be?
I think that's going to be pretty well set right now. Our Big Yellow Bus contract is finalized. Our in-district transportation is finalized with our van drivers, and our out-of-district transportation fluctuates based on our population. But we're still waiting for a final answer on that. We haven't tied it down. I don't anticipate that it's going to be a large increase.
Okay.
I don't anticipate that.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. I noticed that Mr. Al Charles, committee member, has joined. I know I had indicated he'd be joining. There he is. So Al, we were just doing the guest presentations, budget update from Dr. Hearn and Miriam. If you had any questions.
No questions. Thank you. Sorry for being late.
No, it's fine.
I'm good. Thank you.
No questions. Thank you.
I'm wondering what's the difference between the 5% and the 8%? Because I remember the healthcare costs were large.
Yeah, it's about $137,000 at this point. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So where's that other 37?
So right now that 37,000 is currently sitting in the health insurance account. There's always fluctuation with healthcare based on people who come on the plan, come off the plan because of qualifying events or open enrollment. We're hoping to see that go down, but that's kind of where we are right now.
Gotcha. So that could be an example of where we're voting on the bottom line tonight, but in the future, say in November, March of next year, there could be a budget transfer that comes across our desk here. That's $37,000 from healthcare to, some unexpected need that we don't know we need right now, but sort of presents itself mid-year.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I think that's my only question.
Megan, thanks.
No questions.
All right. I think we're good.
Okay, so with that, I would just add that at last week's budget update to town council, the town administrator had indicated support of an increased allocation of $2,396,171. I'm not sure if he said it exactly that same way, but indicated support for the increased percentage of the school department's budget. So anticipating that to be folded in when he does his formal budget presentation. So I am able to share that with you based on the update that he gave last week. And so with that, I would recommend that the school committee approve the FY23 budget in the amount of $70,216,996.
Okay. Is there a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All right. Discussion, questions, Camille, Dave, Al?
Nope.
Nope. Dave?
Just like to say thank you all again so much for all the hard work you've done. I really appreciate it. Dr. Hearn, Miriam, over the past month of answering questions in budget subcommittee, you've quickly become my favorite person. So, thank you all again to the entire administrative team for all the hard work that's put into this. We appreciate it.
Elise?
Absolutely. And just to echo that, and also, for those just tuning in tonight, we've had a number of opportunities to ask you questions and go back and forth about this budget. So there are no surprises in here for us. And as you said, we're voting on the bottom line number at this point. And then if there's transfers that happen mid-year, that all comes across our desk. And so that just helps me remember this part of the process. So much appreciated.
Megan?
No questions.
Okay. All right. So seeing none, but we'll come in motion. We'll do a roll call vote. Camille Bernstein? Dave Callahan?
Yes.
Al Charles?
Yes.
Dave McNeil?
Yes.
Elise Stokes?
Yes.
Megan Whitmore?
Yes.
Denise Spencer? Yes. All right. Motion carries. All right, Dr. Hearn.
Great, thank you. So the next item in your packet is related to school choice. School choice is a law that allows students who reside in one municipality to attend the schools in another municipality unless the school committee in that other municipality votes not to accept school choice students. In Franklin, we have a history of accepting school choice students up until recent times. So our last school choice student graduated in 2020, and that was because 12 or 13 years prior, the district had been accepting school choice students into our community. There is a history of school choice in your packet dating back to 2003, where you have some historical data in terms of applications and how many were accepted. So for example, in 2007, 2008, there was a high of 74 people applying to the district with 39 students being accepted into the district through the school choice program. And a low at that time of 28 applying with 17 accepted. The lowest acceptance was in 2005, 2006 with 9 among the records that you have in front of you here. School choice is something that it's kind of a big policy question. It does have some financial ramifications for the district. We do have students who school choice out of Franklin. The number is small. The number of students who school choice to other communities is small. School choice students have $5,000 from the municipality that follows them to their new school and their new school community. That is often misinterpreted. Oftentimes people think, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Why would I want to do school choice? If the student carries $5,000 with them and the per pupil cost is $14,000, I'm actually losing money. But it's a little bit of a misunderstanding in that if you have a classroom of 15 students and a teacher at $70,000, you're paying that teacher $70,000, whether you have 15 students, 16 students, or 18 students. And so any school choice student you add incrementally supports your budget towards a fixed cost. It does have some risks, and you have to be kind of careful and thoughtful in terms of planning for it. And once you commit to accepting a school choice student, and you accept that student, you are committing to that student through high school. I have been reluctant to recommend that the school committee accept school choice in recent years. And you'll see here, it was not built into, and no assumptions were built into your budget. And it's not recommended this evening. But every year, I do wonder at some point if it's something that the Franklin School Committee might want to consider, given the declining enrollment and the ability to commit to students who in the middle school and high school, now that the enrollment decreases, are finding their way to the later grades. So my recommendation at this point is to not accept school choice students for the 22-23 school year, but continue to study it, perhaps studying it as part of the space needs enrollment component of the space needs subcommittee and subcommittee. I think it's a variable that timing wise you might not want to introduce until you sort that out. But at some point, school choice may be something that you wish to do. Every year we get calls and emails from people in neighboring communities or faculty and staff who are wondering if we accept school choice. So that's my recommendation this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay. Is there a motion to not accept school choice students for the 2022-2023 school year as discussed?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, discussion, questions, Camille? Dave Callahan?
Yeah, thank you. So one question, when you mentioned once you commit to a student, you're committing to them through high school. Is that like a moral commitment or a legal commitment?
It's a legal one.
Okay. Because it's this is a conversation that we had at the budget subcommittee, and it was great because it definitely opens up some extra sources of revenue, and I do appreciate the timing of it, and I would love to, if we could, continue to have that discussion as we're looking forward. to how the lower numbers that we have in our schools are, going to shape our district. But I think it is something that will be fantastic in the future. But thank you for the clarification. I appreciate that.
Al?
So thank you. So definitely appreciate the suggestion that we fold this into the space needs discussion. I think that makes sense given our numbers. And I'm not sure if you know this offhand, but for historically, do we know where these families have come from? Like, were they Franklin residents that had moved to another town and wanted to have their children go to Franklin schools still, or do we know what was the driver for the
I don't know the driver historically. In addition to people from other communities reaching out to us or faculty and staff, we do have people who move out of Franklin who want to keep their children in the schools, and your enrollment policy wouldn't permit that. So the tricky part with school choice is that you open up a certain number of seats and then there's a lottery. So that can be difficult depending upon the timing in which that family moves out of town. But I would imagine that some of the school choice students from the past had previously resided in Franklin and wanted to stay.
Thank you. And then
Lucas may have some detail to add to that.
Just that I would just reiterate what Dr. Hearn said, that some students stay and move. We locally, I know as a former principal who participated in school choice in a neighboring town, there was often applications from local areas regarding just for transportation purposes. School choice needs to make sense to families in a lot of ways as well. But I'm glad you mentioned the selection process is based on the number of seats you have. And if you exceed the number of seats, it's expected that it's random that you select. So you can't necessarily try to prioritize previous residents. If you exceed the number already, it has to be lottery.
Thank you. And then I guess the other question, I know you had mentioned that the number of students that go to do school choice for other towns and leave Franklin is small, but do we know what the drivers are for that?
I think they could be varied depending upon, I think there's lots of different reasons. We haven't done a survey or anything in that regard to find out. I think it's varied.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So quick question. So I know you mentioned it's school choice brings in $5,000 per pupil, but do we have any maybe estimates of total revenue based on past participation or future enrollment projections, or in terms of like the total amount, or is that just too premature to estimate at this point?
Yeah, so I don't have any projections for future. Past amounts have been large over the course of the year. So if we had, 70 kids, we'd be getting $5,000 per pupil in that year. And we file a choice report every year based on the number of pupils that are coming into our district, and we confirm that. Obviously, as Dr. Hearn said, there aren't any at this point in time, but each year, while we accepted choice students, the Department of Ed would require a filing to confirm that, and that's where the revenue would come from.
We don't have a ton of data presented to you. It goes back about 20 years. But in 2007, 2008, we had 76 students. So at 5,000, that would approximate 400,000 in revenue, which goes into a revolving fund that can be, unlike some of your other revolving funds, which are very narrow, the school choice revolving fund is a pretty broad applicability to how it can be spent.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Please.
So if a district decides to be, is open to school choice, would they have a certain amount of seats at elementary, a certain amount of seats at middle, a certain amount of seats at high?
Yep.
And it's the school committee would decide how many seats at what level?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And based on my experience, and I think many districts have school choice begin at the elementary. So the students are kind of experiencing that same like vertical curriculum through K to 12, pre-K to 12. K to 12, you can't do school choice pre-K.
Usually recommended by seats available and then approved through school committee as well, like as that process. So now talking about whether or not you participate in the program, but in the summer, based on schedules and kind of finalizing, getting more more information about how many students are enrolled in sections is when you can start to get more clear on what your available seats are.
That makes sense. And I would,
Vary by grade.
right. So it could be specific, fourth grade, this many seats.
Yes.
Third grade, this, I see.
At
Okay.
this particular school,
Gotcha. So
So
very specific.
very,
Okay.
very specific.
Okay. So that makes sense as far as the space needs subcommittee goes, what we're watching the enrollment, and at a certain point, if there's redistricting, we're going to sort of, the dust is going to settle, and we're going to have an understanding of how many seats at this school and this grade might be open. Okay.
Exactly,
Interesting.
exactly. And I think, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I have another question if you want a distraction. So how does this work with students with disabilities? Is there like some kind of confidentiality as they're applying, or is it, are they
Students with
sending
disabilities
packets?
can apply
Okay.
and would be expected to be accepted into the district.
I see. So is it like they send a packet? Like they would?
I don't think it's
Okay.
like, not like an out of district placement or
Okay.
anything like that. It's, it's kind of like they're put into they enroll into the group in the lottery. And, the student services would follow, we would be responsible for student services for them.
Gotcha. So that could theoretically, if you build it, they will come,
Yes. Yes, that
right,
is.
as far as specialized programs go.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep. And I think that reminds me of what I was going to say, which is that, it's both a technical and kind of an adaptive policy question. So technically, we've got X number of seats and we could accept students into this school. But I think that there's probably like some groundwork to be laid and a foundation to be laid in terms of the more adaptive cultural components to it. And especially since it's been so long since school choice students have been in the district. So that's just something maybe if you're thinking about it and considering it, thinking about kind of having that like community conversation, both with families and then also with faculty and staff and administrators too.
Right. And like the school climate, school culture and climate piece, really.
Yeah.
As far as accepting
Exactly.
new people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Interesting. Thanks. Melissa?
Megan?
Yeah, it sounds interesting. And I'd consider it for, whatever year it might, make sense. But I don't have any questions.
All right, we have a motion and a second, so vote will come on the motion. We'll do a roll call vote. Camille?
I don't really know what to say because it's a negative. So
Yes.
do
Yes.
I say yes. Okay.
To say yes,
Yes.
to not accept school
Yes.
choice.
So I'm
Okay.
saying yes.
Okay. Dave Callahan?
Yes.
Al Charles?
Yes.
Dave McNeil?
Yes.
Elise Stokes?
Yes.
Megan Whitmore?
Yes.
Denise Spencer, yes. All right, motion carries.
Thank you.
Dr. Hearn?
Great, thank you. In your packet is a revised 22-23 school calendar. So back in February, maybe, you adopted an initial school calendar that set the start date, the end date, and the major breaks and holidays during the school year. And we said we wanted to come back to you with the professional development and early release days and parent conference half days. So in consultation with our administrative team, we also share the draft contract with FEA leadership and have a discussion and conversation with them about the placement of days. We present to you this 22-23 school calendar. We have included 14 early release days in the proposed calendar. It is an increase from previous years, and we're advocating for this increase to provide additional time for professional development as well as educator collaboration, given the responsibilities involved in implementing initiatives of the district and school improvement plans. That includes things like data analysis of the NWEA MAP test. It could also include some of the things you heard tonight, like the implementation of the science curriculum, educator evaluation, and other things that teachers are attending to. The calendar is also inclusive of additional time for spring conferences. This year, we returned elementary conferences for families in March, and this calendar proposes also having March conferences for the middle school. that the middle school principals are advocating for. Most of the early release days are on Fridays, although you'll see several are on Wednesdays. I think there's 3 over the course of the year on Wednesdays. Those would back up against a faculty meeting, providing additional concentrated time for faculty and staff to work together. And lastly, time on learning has been carefully reviewed and carefully looked at. Linda Ashley and Tina Rogers put this together and reviewed time on learning at all of the levels. And this does maintain that the expectation of time on learning of 900 hours for elementary and 990 for secondary. And so we're happy to answer any questions that you have. It would be my recommendation that you adopt this calendar for the 22-23 school year.
All right. Is there a motion to adopt the revised 2022-2023 school calendar as discussed?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Discussion, questions, Camille?
I'd actually like to propose an amendment that we change the name of Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day.
Okay. So
I forget how to phrase it. I move.
we have a motion to amend the motion to adopt the revised school calendar to replace Indigenous Peoples Day.
No,
No,
Columbus
to replace Columbus Day with Indigenous People Day. Okay. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. So we will vote on the
I have
amended.
discussion first.
Do we have a discussion first? This is my first time doing this.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I would suggest a discussion or
Okay.
yeah, if anybody wants to discuss there.
I know that we have a DEI committee that's going to look at with collaboration of parents and faith leaders for other holidays, but this one doesn't add a day. It just updates the language to reflect appropriate acknowledgement of the holiday. And I'd like to report that there are 2 bills in the state legislature, H3191 and S2027. And according to the website, this Friday, they were up for reports, and they've already had a hearing last fall, and they're up for report. And I'd also like to read from a WBUR article from last September, where it talked about the support that Italian Americans have for Indigenous Day. So if I could, I'd just like to read a paragraph. Sure. Heather Lavelle, who co-founded Italian Americans for Indigenous Peoples Day, said her group empathizes with the feelings of Italian Americans who view the day as a symbol of their ancestors overcoming adversity. The holiday has been celebrated unofficially since 1792, but it was officially a federal holiday in 1937 from my research. Lavelle, a Bedford resident, says, but things are much different for us today. Our culture is celebrated, especially throughout October, which is officially recognized as Italian American Heritage Month in the Commonwealth. We enjoy a level of status and recognition in society that Native people do not. And we have a responsibility to use that platform we now have to ensure we are not repeating the same patterns of abuse that our ancestors endured. So what she's saying is that she's acknowledging that the holiday was enacted at first by Italian Americans who felt discriminated against in the early part of the 20th century. However, once you attain a status of not being oppressed in that way anymore, then it's my thought and her thought too, that it's her obligation to help elevate other people. So I stand with her and support changing it to Indigenous Peoples Day. And I'm hoping that that report from the legislature will make it a state change as well. Thank you.
Dave Callahan?
Not at this moment.
Okay. Al Charles?
No comments. Actually, I'm sorry. I do have a comment. So not regarding the amendment, or should I hold on if it's not regarding the amendment, or am I good to go?
A question on what?
So regarding kindergarten placement, I know we talked about it the last time. I don't recall exactly what was the response in terms of what would be the first day of kindergarten and when would that be placed on the calendar?
I think that's a fair question because if you were to vote, you'd be voting on an
On the whole
amended calendar.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think it's a fair question to ask and have a conversation about other things in addition to what the amendment is. We have not yet set when the first day of kindergarten would be. That is a conversation that we typically have with the FEA leadership after we determine the case screening process. Typically, kindergarten starts a few days after the first day of students for 1st through 12th.
Great, thank you. No other
You all
questions.
set now?
Yep. Thank
Okay.
you.
Dave?
I guess I just have one question. Yeah, so I am supportive of the change. I guess my only question, and maybe for discussion this, because Columbus Day is October 12th to commemorate the landing of Christopher Columbus. No, in the in the Americas. So I'm just wondering, would there be a more appropriate day that's like more appropriate to Indigenous people's culture that might be better than October 12th? I guess that's just my only question. I am supportive of the change because I don't think I don't see to your point, Camille, don't see the point in commemorating Christopher Columbus. That's just my only question. I don't necessarily have an answer to that. I guess I'm just wondering.
Okay. Elise?
Okay, so as far as the 14 half days go, so this year there were 11?
I think so.
Okay.
That sounds about right.
So as a mom, they make me crazy as a working mother. But as a professional who works in education, I understand the value of the time for professional development and all these initiatives that we're pushing through, that the staff need time to do this. So it's okay for me to have two feelings at once about these half days. 14 sounds like a lot to me, but I guess having some on Wednesday, some on Friday sort of will break it up. As far as executive functioning and organization goes, I think it was Dave Callahan or Al who had suggested at one point when we were looking at the calendar, can you please put the start and end times down for half days for us poor parents that have so many things in our brains and cannot remember what a half day looks like. 10:40,
Yes.
I think.
Yes.
We text about these things, asking each other, and it's April and we still don't know. So I know that sounds like such a silly thing, but it's like, would be helpful. You know, these margins are big. Can they just move to the side, like formatting
Yes,
somewhere?
we can definitely do that.
That would be really, really great. And up in the top, at the very, very top in the header, it says half days to be added, but the half days are here. So that will be changed, right? Once it's voted on.
Yep.
And again, I'm just talking myself through this. So there's one half day every month, 2 in October. I do appreciate as a school committee member being updated about the PD times and what's happening, because that just helps me as a mom understand the value and how it's of the value of the half day and struggling or, trying to figure out childcare on that half day, but understanding the value of it and keeping that at the forefront of my brain as a mom. So I appreciate that. That's it.
Sorry, sometimes I talk loud.
What?
Sometimes I just talk out loud.
That's okay.
Megan.
Yeah, thanks, Lady Bernstein, for that report that you delivered. But I don't have any questions about the calendar.
Okay. So I guess just kind of piggyback off of. Oh
No. I think you're going to address the same. Maybe you're going to address the same thing with
can I
Dave.
talk
Yeah.
now? Okay. So, just to kind of answer a question of yours, Dave. So Indigenous peoples in Massachusetts have asked for this change. I talked about this last year. The Massachusetts Center for Native American Awareness has asked for communities to make this change. And I think that as part of our anti-racism work, it's important. And, I agree with Camille that, we're ignorant of the oppression of the Indigenous people, and it's just easy to ignore it. So there you go. Camille, you had something else?
I was simply going to say, and for the audience too, in case they are wondering why is there a controversy, it's because Indigenous people feel as though if it's commemorating the quote discovery of America, there were already people here. It was already populated. There was rich culture for thousands of years. And so the idea that many of us grew up learning that he discovered America is not quite true. And so then it leaves you with like, what are you really celebrating? That he landed here? Also, Indigenous people consider him a colonizer, and a lot of death and destruction what came out of that. And when we know better, we do better. So that's how I understand it.
Okay, so we have a motion to amend and a second. Any more discussion, questions? I'm looking at Al, he's shaking his head. Dave Callahan? Going once? Okay, all right, so roll call vote. Camille Bernstein voting to amend.
Yes, I'm voting to amend.
Okay,
So I think just to be clear, you're voting on the calendar as amended?
yes, sorry, voting on.
Yes, voting on the calendar as amended, which means covers everything, including the change on the day. Yes,
Yes.
yes, that would be a yes.
Okay, Dave Callahan,
Yes.
Al Charles,
Yes.
Dave McNeil,
Yes.
Elise Stokes.
Yes.
Megan Whitmore,
Yes.
me Spencer, yes, all right. All right, the amendment is carried. Okay. Okay, Cooperstown field trip, Dr. Hearn.
We ended up revising since we met to discuss the packet, we put that in consent agenda since it's a recurring trip.
You're right. Yes, ignore me. All right, discussion only items. There are none. Information matters, superintendent evaluations. Elise?
Why, yes. We met earlier tonight to review the superintendent evaluation process. We expect to review the superintendent's evidence in May and will complete the final evaluation in June.
Thank you, Elise. Budget, Dave McNeil.
Yes, the budget subcommittee met on March 29th, where we discussed the recommended budget adjustment that was detailed this evening. Members also had opportunities to ask any clarifying questions or follow-up questions from the public hearing, and we do not have another budget meeting scheduled at this time.
Okay. When are the town budget meetings? The budget hearings?
So
is that the end of
FinCom is
May?
going to be the week of May 9th. We have a regularly scheduled school committee meeting on the 10th, so I think we'll be sometime later that week.
Mhm.
And then the town council budget hearing is, I want to say, May 25th and 26th.
Thank you. Policy, Dave Callahan.
So our April policy meeting had to be postponed. Next one we have, it will be on May 3rd.
May 3rd. Yay. All right, community relations. So an announcement that our legislative forum has been canceled and will hopefully be rescheduling in the near future. I will keep everyone up to date. Space needs and facilities assessment, Al Charles.
Sorry, trying to get off mute. So we did have our first initial meeting where we talked through just the plan, our initial phase, which was gathering information. We do have our next meeting on the 26th of April, I believe. Let me just double check real quick. Sorry, no, 28th.
Okay, thank you. Joint PCCs.
It's me again. So we did not have our meeting today just due to low attendance. We will be meeting again in May. I believe it's the 3rd.
All right, May 3rd. Okay, SWAC, Elise.
At our meeting last week, we discussed some events to share wellness-related information and better engage the community in our work. On our behalf, Lucas has contacted the Franklin Farmers Market about opportunities for a SWAC booth this summer. I'll keep you posted when that and other events are confirmed. We might be going on the road.
I have an update to add.
What's the update? Yes.
I received word back from the farmers market. We do have a booth that they will set up. We just have to finish the application process. They'll select the dates, and I'm sure we'll have other opportunities to communicate more as we go through the year. It's exciting.
That's really exciting. Yes, it's going to be a good time. And our next SWAC meeting is Tuesday, May 4th.
Do you get to pick which booth you're next to?
I don't know. We have so many questions.
Questions.
Yeah, it's going to be very
The cupcake
exciting.
one or the
bread one.
Oh, the bread
bread
one.
Big lines there.
Oh my God, now I'm hungry. All right, CPAC, Elise.
So the CPAC is holding a workshop and meeting tomorrow night on Zoom. The workshop starts at 7 p.m. It's focused on mental health skill building, and the CPAC board meeting will be held afterwards at 8 p.m. The event is open to the public, and we hope people will take advantage of this free opportunity.
All right. Substance Abuse Task Force met this meeting. I'm sorry I was unable to attend. So Lucas or Dave, any update?
I'm happy
Lucas?
to share an update.
Okay.
We met to debrief the critical conversations that took place earlier this month and received some really solid information from the group. Our plan now is to survey families about some potential topics that could come up that could serve as future critical conversations. And also we are planning a fall critical conversation that'll be in the works. There's a few topics that have risen to the top that may make their way out. So there's more planning to be done, but certainly we had a productive meeting. Anything to add, Mrs. Morrow?
Nope. Yep. We'll look forward to another critical conversations in October.
Okay. All right. Perfect. All right. And diversity, equity, inclusion, we meet tomorrow afternoon. All right. So that's all set. Consent agenda, Dr. Ahern.
I recommend approval of the minutes of the March 22nd, 2022 school committee meeting as detailed. I recommend approval of the executive session minutes of the March 2022 school committee meeting as detailed. I recommend approval of the request of Miguel Carmo to take DECA students to Atlanta, Georgia for the international competition from April 23rd through 27th, 2022 as detailed. I recommend approval of the request of Ms. Trottier to take the JFK second graders to Roger Williams Park Zoo in Providence, Rhode Island on May 20th, 2022 as detailed. And I recommend approval of the request of Zach Brown to take the FHS baseball players to Cooperstown, New York from April 18th to 19th, 2022 as detailed.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as detailed?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Discussion, questions, Camille?
If the people need a chaperone for the zoo, I will go. And if not, just go see the giant anteater, please.
That's what I was going to say. I want to go so bad. Dave Callahan, anything?
No, this is fantastic.
All right. Al?
No questions at this time. Thank you.
No, thank you.
That's it. Elise?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Denise? Yes. All right. Motion carries. All right. Next on the agenda is citizens' comments. So are there any citizens in the audience, in person or online, who would like to make a comment on an item not on tonight's agenda and falls within the committee's purview? All right. You could come up and state your name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Carol O'Neill. I live at 11 Colt Road.
Okay.
My grandchildren are not in the schools. My children were in the schools. They're older now. And I worked in the schools. Just to preface what I'm going to say to you is that a few years back, I had a conundrum of sorts in wherein I was wondering about how ethical our society was. So I decided to take a philosophy ethics course, a summer intensive one where I just read and did term papers the whole summer. And I came across, interesting things like, I never pronounced this right, utilitarianism. It's a philosophy. And the common good. And I aced the course, but did I actually learn what I came in there to learn? And it wasn't the professor. He was great. It was me. Did I learn what I came in to learn? And so all of these years, I always had this wondering. And then the pandemic came, and I still had questions about it. And we had this we and me kind of thing going on. So I was kind of wondering, like, what is this about? Should somebody, say that they want restrictions to be stopped so they can go to the hairdresser? what are we talking about when it comes to all of us? And then last October, my 6-year-old granddaughter, I was there in the background while her mother took her in to have her shot, her COVID shot. And she's standing there, this little girl, and she's shaking. She's shaking. And she didn't want the shot. She was afraid. And then the woman who was administering the shot said to her, "You're a hero." And I thought, oh my God, oh my goodness, this is where I'm coming from. I finally recognize what the common good is about. And I intend to speak more about this to my grandchildren and my granddaughter and my other grandchildren, in that when she was told she was a hero, she stopped shaking and she took that shot. And what was trying to be said to her is that she was doing this for the common good. And I've thought about what you have all done, and you have all done these past couple of years in the school committee before you, in trying to deal with this pandemic and trying to do things for the better of all of us and our students. And I just want you to know that I thank you. You get criticized all too often. It is a tough, tough thing that you're all doing. It's our schools. And I just want you to know that I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Lucas, can you ensure that people on Zoom can raise their hand? Just in case anyone on Zoom. I know there's some.
I think they have the capability. I think Al had raised his hand.
Okay.
So if anybody wanted to, that's what they would need to do.
Okay. All right. Seeing none. All right. New business, Dr. Ahern.
At the next meeting, I believe we are going to have some guests in the guest presentation area from our science fair winners at your request. So we've got a couple students from the high school coming to share their science fair projects. And that is in addition to, other routine matters we may have, field trips, gift acceptances, budget transfers, and the like.
Okay. All right. So at this time, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn the April 12th school committee meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Roll call vote. Camille?
Yes.
Dave Callahan?
Yes.
Al Charles?
Yes.
Dave McNeil?
Yes.
Elise Stokes?
Yes.
Megan Whitmore?
Yes.
Yes. All right. Thank you, everyone.
That was a short session.
No executive session.
Fastest week
Recording stopped.
we ever had.
No.
It's been a while.
All right. I think we're done.